Today on the Locked On Blues podcast, I'm going to give all my thoughts on the Nick Leddy trade, the lack of other trades, and some of the other trades in the NHL. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Washington Capitals St. Louis Blues game tonight. And I'm also going to be giving my thoughts on Vladimir Tarasenko because there is a report that he has maybe potentially had a change of heart. Who knows? All that and more. Make sure you stay tuned.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Locked On Blues podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and your number one source for daily blues content. I'm coming to you live from my spring break hotel. So, going to be a little bit shorter episode today. Got a busy schedule. That's why I wasn't on yesterday's episode. And that's why, again, today's episode will be a little bit shorter, probably right around 20 minutes. So, yeah, but got a lot to get into, though. So, it's going to be very action packed for sure. I think to start, I will be talking about Nick Leddy, what he brings to the team, all that sort of thing. Probably going to take me probably bleed into the second segment as well. In the second segment, I'm going to talk about Vladimir Tarasenko because the report that mentioned that the whole trade request hasn't been an issue all year. So do with that what you will. That might not necessarily mean that he's rescinded his trade request, but I'm going to talk about that in the second segment. And then the third segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Capitals game. Now, this is probably going to be up on YouTube before the game and Spotify and those places after the game. So if you're watching on YouTube, it'll still be timely, but I think it won't be up on the listening platforms until afterwards. So I'm not going to go into too much detail into the Capitals game because I know Tommy did that yesterday. But before I get into any of that, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. Now, the St. Louis Blues acquired 31-year-old left defenseman Nick Leddy in exchange for Oskar Sundqvist, Jake Walman, and a second-round pick. Now, I'm going to break down this deal. They also acquired Luke Witkowski, another depth defenseman. So the way that I've been looking at this deal, Oskar Sundqvist is a player who is unfortunately a shell of his former self. Obviously, a huge instrumental part of the Cup run. Spectacular player, sort of a Swiss Army knife player for the Blues, but tore his ACL unfortunately, and has not been close to the same since. We've talked about it. A lot on this podcast how he isn't even able to extend his knee all the way due to scar tissue. And I mean, you can tell that it's just something that's really, really weighing on him and preventing him from being the player that he once was. So as much as it sucks to see Sonny go, it makes sense. He was making a little bit more money than you would have liked for a player of caliber due to that injury. And it stinks. Sonny was loved here. He still will be loved in St. Louis. One of my favorite players. Great energy, great locker room guy. But so that is probably the biggest painful part of the trade for me. But Jake Walman getting shipped out too is tough to see. I do think Nick Leddy is a bit of an upgrade over Walman for sure. Walman, on the other hand, had that youth and he had that bond with Kyrou and Thomas. And I don't want to read too much into it, but you want to keep your star players happy. And I know they understand that it's a business. I don't think Jordan Kyrou is going to go out and request a trade because they traded his friend Jake Walman, but definitely a bit of a tough blow to see, Jordan Kyrou's best friend on the team get traded away. And Robert Thomas as well. A lot of those young guys, they all got along really well. I know Kyrou and Walman were even friends back when they were both in the AHL. So that was a tough part of it. But in terms of upgrade, you know, defense definitely gets a little bit better with Leddy over Walman, and especially being able to move a guy like Nico Mikkola down to the third pairing probably permanently is going to be nice as well. So I'm a little bit more optimistic about this trade than I was when it initially reported. And then the way that I look at it is, so Nick Leddy was traded for Oskar Sundqvist. Luke Witkowski was traded for Jake Walman, and the Blues had to give up a second round pick in order for a salary to be retained. It's not ideal, but when you look at it like that, and you look at it as if the standpoint that they're going to, this is sort of a precursor to hopefully a bigger move in the offseason when they have more cap space, that could be beneficial for the Blues in the long run. So that being said, I'm going to continue to talk about the trade a little bit more, talk about Nick Leddy, what he brings to the team, what I'm expecting to see out of him tonight and the season moving forward in the second segment. But first, got to tell you guys about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Now, it's that time of year, or betonline.net, excuse me. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season, and it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all the sports betting wagering information needs you may have, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we'll be right back with the second segment. All right, let's talk about Nick Leddy. So, Blues needed a left defenseman. That's no secret. They didn't get Ben Sherratt. They didn't get Hampus Lindholm. And they did not get Jacob Chikrin. And they did not get Travis Sanheim. And they did not get Ivan Provorov. They did not get a single name that had been mentioned on the podcast in the days and the weeks leading up to the trade deadline. But who they did get is Nick Leddy. Now, Nick Leddy is a really, really good puck-moving defenseman. That is his biggest strength for sure, is moving the puck out of his own zone, starting a rush. And that's definitely something that the Blues struggle with. However, it's not the biggest weak point of the Blues defense. The Blues, in my opinion, needed a guy who could take some of the weight off of Parayko's shoulders. Now, Nick Leddy could take some of the weight off Parayko's shoulders because Parayko is definitely being asked to kind of hold more of an offensive play style this season when Nico Mikkola was on his pairing. And if Nick Leddy, can be that puck mover for that line, if he's on that pairing, that is, which I'm assuming he will be. If Nick Leddy is able to be the puck mover for that line and allow Colton Parayko to sit back and be more defensive focused, that could be a bit of an upgrade for both of them. Not only are we getting an upgrade at that lefty position for the first pairing, but we're also getting, Colton Parayko playing better hockey because he's not being asked to do something that's sort of out of his play style. But like I said, the Blues didn't necessarily have puck moving defensemen as their biggest need. I thought they needed like a shutdown guy. That would have been really nice. Obviously, those are hard to come by in the NHL. Hampus Lindholm probably was the closest name traded in terms of who could have fit that need for the St. Louis Blues, but that would have came with a much bigger asking price and also an 8-year extension that he got from Boston. So I don't know if Hampus Lindholm was the long-term solution for the Blues defense anyways, especially already having multiple guys that are going to be on the wrong side of 30 with contracts expiring, those 8-year deals. It would have put the Blues in a very difficult situation to have four basically shored up with, Krug, Falk, and Parayko all on long-term contracts. So it would have been tough to maneuver around that defense with pretty much that top four being locked up. So I like this move in the long term for the Blues. I think it gives them a lot more flexibility to do something in the offseason if they need to, if they want to upgrade that position in a different way, if they want to go out and upgrade their bottom six, which now is a little bit weaker with Sundqvist's departure, even though Sonny wasn't doing the best job. It's interesting. There's a lot that comes with it. It's going to give a guy like Nathan Walker maybe a chance to play, Dakota Joshua, Logan Brown, guys that have shown some promise and just haven't really gotten a ton of playing time. They're going to be asked to do a lot more now with Oskar Sundqvist's departure. So we could see, Klim Kostin getting a bigger role. Who knows? There's a lot that could come from this trade besides just Nick Leddy being on the Blues. Now, Nick Leddy is a guy that I think he had like 51 points 2 years ago. So he is playing on the Detroit Red Wings, who are really, really bad. If he can return to that player that he was 2 seasons ago and, be putting up a point every other game, producing a ton of offense, whatever. And he was on the third pairing in Detroit, getting very sheltered minutes. Now he's going to be on the first pairing. Who knows? There's a very good chance that this is a career resurgence for Nick Leddy, and he's able to go on and be really, really successful with the Blues this season. My worry is that he's kind of past his prime. Um, he is only 31, which means he should have a couple years left in the tank, especially at the defensive position. They typically tend to peak a little bit later than forwards. So I don't think that he's just going to be, a shell of himself. I don't think that he's washed, fallen off a cliff. Maybe he's lost a step, maybe, but I don't know. I think Nick Leddy is going to play a lot better in St. Louis than he did in Detroit because of the players around him and the fact that he's not stuck on the third pairing. I don't know if Nick Leddy moves the needle enough to help the Blues compete for a Stanley Cup, especially considering what other teams went out and did. So it's interesting. It's going to be only time will tell, and that's why I think tonight's game against the Washington Capitals is going to be very interesting to see how Nick Leddy does, because I don't know if you all remember, but Marco Scandella got traded here, and in his first 10 games on a pairing with Colton Parayko, looked like a number one defenseman, or looks like a number one and two defensemen. The two of them did. That pairing was spectacular. Eventually Scandella kind of puttered out and didn't maintain that momentum. But even if we can get a short burst of Nick Leddy having that chemistry with Colton Parayko, it would be highly beneficial for both parties. I talked about that a lot in the first segment. I think if Nick Leddy is able to improve Colton Parayko's stock, like Parayko is able to play better as a result, this trade would be much more of a W than I think it is at the moment. Right now, I think this trade is neutral. I don't think it's a good trade. I don't think it's as an atrocious of a trade as I thought it was yesterday. I was a little reactionary, a little disappointed, but I don't think it was, an awful trade. I don't think we're going to be looking at this trade back in a few years and be like, wow, one of the worst trades Doug Armstrong has ever made. Yeah, that's losing that second round pick in such a stacked draft class stinks. But they kept their first, and hopefully that second round pick will be near the end of it anyways, and it'll basically be a third round pick. Who knows? But I think the biggest question marks are: can Nick Leddy maintain or return to that form that he had 2 seasons ago when he was putting up almost 50 points? And can he help Colton Parayko return to form where he was 3 years ago in that cup? I haven't seen that version of Colton Parayko in a while because he hasn't had a guy like Jay Bouwmeester to rely on in a while. So hopefully, both of those things can occur and Colton Parayko can, reach the next level we all kind of expected out of him after that cup run when he was so dominant. Now, moving on from the trade talk, I do want to go over a report regarding Vladimir Tarasenko. Now, this is a Luke Korak tweet. Doug Armstrong mentioning the Tarasenko trade talk. He said, quote, "No, that Vladdy thing went away pretty quickly when training camp became in play. He's having a great year. That hasn't been an issue, and it wasn't an issue for anyone, quite honestly, all year." So, I mean, that's not saying much. There's no line in there that says like, oh yeah, he's happy to be here, he wants to stay here. But what that is saying is that it's not like a Jake DeBrusk where he was still openly asking to be traded right up until the trade deadline. Like, yeah, he's playing well, but he still wants out. Like, from the way that tweet is phrased, it makes me assume that Tarasenko hasn't expressed his desire to be traded at all during the season. Now, does that mean that once the offseason rolls around, he's not gonna, tap Doug on the shoulder, be like, hey, by the way, still want to get traded, just didn't want to bring this up during the season? That's I still think that that's a likely possibility. But I don't think it's as much of a guarantee as it was when the trade request officially was made public. And I've said this before. We got, throughout months and months and months of rumors, we got 2 substantiated tweets, or like 3 substantiated tweets, that there was a trade request made a few months prior, and they were working on something. A lot can change between now and then, especially, playing in front of the fans, having as successful of a season as he is, playing with guys like Ivan Barbashev and Pavel Buchnevich. Who knows? Maybe he's had a change of heart. I don't think that tweet guarantees that he's going to be, a Blue for life or anything like that, but I think it's the best news that we've gotten all season. It's been very, very quiet on that front. Um, and that is a good thing, but it also could just be, there's an unspoken agreement that we're going to find a trade whenever possible, or he'll walk away after his contract's and we'll have to wait and see with that. But I'm very optimistic with the way that sounded. Now, in this third segment, I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about the Washington Capitals game because, like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, the game's probably about to start. But if you're listening to it wherever you get your podcast, the game's probably already happened. So I'm going to kind of give a more broad approach, talk about the new look Blues with Nick Leddy, what I expect to see tonight and moving forward. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, I want to tell you guys about our good friends over at Rock Auto. With the ever increasing numbers of makes and models, it's not possible for your local chain or to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. I'll be right back with the final segment. All right. So those Blues on the Washington Capitals tonight. I want to see right now whether it's at 7 or 8 o'clock Eastern time. So yeah, pretty soon after this episode will go live on YouTube. Most likely, the Blues will be taking on the Washington Capitals. Nick Leddy is making his debut. So what do I expect to see out of Nick Leddy tonight? And can that be a precursor for the rest of the season? Now, Nick Leddy, like I talked about earlier, is a puck-moving defenseman, a guy that's able to make the breakout pretty smoothly and play well. That being said, I'm expecting the Blues breakouts to be pristine tonight. I think if you're bringing in a guy like Nick Leddy and you're primarily focusing on moving the puck, getting out of the zone, I expect the Blues to play a pretty strong north-south game, while sticking to their physical style of play. I think Nick Leddy could gel really well with a guy like Jordan Kyrou, hitting him on those breakout passes and his speed just blinding defenses. I think those two could be a bit of a dynamic duo. That whole line in general could be pretty exciting to see with Nick Leddy being able to move the puck so well. But I don't know. I want responsible defense from Nick Leddy and the rest of the Blues. We always talk about the best game from defensemen, unless it's a guy like Cale Makar who's putting up, or Roman Josi who's putting up, 4 points a game. The best game from defensemen are ones where you don't really notice them that much. And hopefully Nick Leddy doesn't really, have any of those gaffes or turnovers or anything like that. And if we're not screaming Nick Leddy's name at all, at the TV, that means it's a good night. Unless it's in a positive way, like, holy crap, Nick Leddy, what a pass. It's definitely tough. I don't know if he's practiced with the team yet. Maybe at like a morning skate, so he's gonna be kind of working his way into things for sure. But yeah, I number one thing is the breakouts of the St. Louis Blues, something that they've kind of struggled with, turning the puck over in their own zone a lot, not stringing passes together. A guy like Nick Leddy probably instantly becomes maybe their best breakout defenseman. That is, kind of his only really elite skill at this moment in time, that at least that from what we've seen this year. So it would be really nice to sort of see him get a few assists, spearhead some goals. Would be amazing. Would put a huge sense of relief in myself and hopefully the rest of the Blues fans as well, those that are still skeptical about this trade. That being said, my locked on player of the game is Nick Leddy. I didn't listen to Tommy's solo, so maybe he gave the same answer, but it's a cop out answer. It's an easy answer. But I think, like I said, if Nick Leddy can sort of reestablish the pace of the St. Louis Blues, they've been really struggling a lot lately. Not really been able to string wins together consistently for a couple weeks now. So if Nick Leddy can kind of reignite the Blues offense a little bit, all while being comfortable and confident in his own zone and making plays and taking the load off of, I don't know, starting a goaltender actually. It's a good question. Whoever's in net, I would hope that they. There are 7 defensemen as well, so I would hope that they get a bit of an easier night tonight because of the addition of Nick Leddy. Billy Husso is going to be the starter tonight, so Billy Husso can hopefully get himself some easier looks that he has been in some previous games, because I expect Nick Leddy to elevate the rest of the defense as well, with a guy like Nico Mikkola being able to comfortably shift down to the third line, where he's looked really, really strong this season on that third pairing. The Krug-Falk pairing is going to be good. It always is. So, yeah, hopefully Nick Leddy is able to do all of those things and more, and I can look like a fool for how upset I was about the trade initially. But that being said, that is all the time I have for you guys today on the Locked On Blues. I want to thank you all so much for listening and watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening. Hit that notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. Leave a like and a comment as well. We try to interact with every comment that you guys leave. I'm probably gonna honestly go do that now on some of the previous videos. So yeah, leave a comment. We'll interact with it. We'll mention it in the next episode if you guys have a hot take or anything like that. So let us know there. Follow us on all of our socials on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Locked On Blues. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hyman NHL. You can follow Tommy on Twitter at TWelcher15. Like I said, thanks so much for listening. And as always, let's go Blues.